Today on the Pitchbook podcast, I am pitching Zombified by Athena Actopus. And Zach is pitching The Art of Thinking Clearly by Rolf Dobelli. Zach, how are you? You ready for the fourth? You're going out of town. Somewhere fun?
Yeah. We're going to a small town, Delta, Utah,
Okay.
to pay homage to the great patriots in Delta.
Very good.
This is their, it's like Christmas, 4th of July. That's the order down there. So we're gonna be in the parade. Oh yeah, people. I think there's 2,000 or 3,000 people that live in Delta, and all of their kids come home. It is a big deal.
Okay.
And it's been built up. I'm going to be in the parade. I'm doing a little booth. We're going to sell some American flags. Yeah. So I don't know if you can see behind me, those that are watching, you see like a Betsy Ross metal flag. I've got a bunch of those. I've got an American flag. I've got the Gadsden flag. Yeah. Just all kinds of random stuff made out of steel. It's going to be fun. We're going to donate some of the proceeds to a local food shelter, food children's charity down there. So I'm hoping we just sell all the inventory and just be good.
Awesome. Well,
what are you doing?
Well, I am flying to California to go to Universal Studios and Disneyland, and I don't know how much more American it gets than just eating churros at Disneyland, right? That's pretty American.
That's pretty
I know
patriotic.
Disneyland is in Paris and Tokyo and all that fun stuff, but it's pretty American. So
home base is in the US.
There you go. Yeah, so that'll be fun. All right, I'm excited to hear The Art of Thinking Clearly. I could have sworn that I've put this in my library and I've just never listened. I don't know. I might even own it on Audible, but I swear I've heard of this book, but I obviously don't know it. So tell me about it. How'd you find it?
Okay. All right. It's been on my list forever, and you recommended the Libby app.
Mm-hmm.
And since our conversation, it's really funny, but that episode where we talked about the Libby app, I've had like 4 people ask me about it.
Yeah.
Now I'm like an evangelist, like Matt Liggett. I'm selling Libby. It's free.
It's free.
They should give me a commission. I don't even know how they make money.
I don't.
But I'm like, they're like, well, how are you reading 3 or 4 books a month? I'm like, 1 on Audible, 2 on Libby, 1 paperback that I'm reading.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy, the cadence, but it's fun. It's a lot of good information, and I've had to like cut out the news. So this book,
that's probably a good thing. That's a good thing.
It's a good thing.
Yes,
yeah. Get rid of the news, consume high quality content. Your brain just adjusts.
Yep.
So this book, one thing about the Libby app that I didn't know is how it works is you put in a request for 4 or 5 books. You don't want to do 10 because they will say, oh, your book's ready. Your book's ready. Your book's ready. And if you don't check it out, you have to kind of, and maybe I'm not doing it right. You have to like put it back, go back in the queue. Like, I'm not ready to listen to this.
I have a tip
I'm still listening.
I have a tip, but go on. Okay. I'll remember it. Go ahead.
I feel so stupid. Anyways, so I'm like, I'm not ready to read this. Put me back in queue. So it puts me back in queue. So I thought, well, sometimes I might be waiting a week for a book to show up.
Sure.
So I thought, I'm just going to take 10 books and just go through first, see if they're in the Libby app. It tells you what the time wait is to listen to some of these books. Some of them are out like 6 months.
Oh yeah.
So I'm like, okay, put me in the queue for those. This one, I just finished it last week. The Art of Thinking Clearly. It's been on my list. I've got this list of maybe 100 books that I want to listen to. I think, as you and I have talked about, I've got about 1,600 books I want to get through before I die, but I've got a working list of about 100. This was on that list. So I thought, I'm just going to see if it's available. So it was on there, and I put it on there. So this book.
Let me hold on before you start. Let me tell you your tip. Let me tell you the tip.
Okay, give all of our listeners the Libby tip.
the default, I believe, is 14 days that you can borrow the book for.
Yes.
However, when you go to do your next book, I believe you click on it and then it says like 14 days. There's a drop down menu and you can change it to 21. And
What?
then everything kind of defaults to 21. Sometimes they won't let you borrow it for 21 because it's like if it's super popular or whatever. But now everything, once I made that change on like my initial book of 21 days, everything defaults to 21. So next
Nice.
time you do that, just try to,
Okay.
when it says the time frame, just click on the button and see if you can do it for 21 days.
Right
Just gives
on.
you some more time. So,
I just checked one out today and I didn't
okay.
do that. So I'm
Okay.
like,
Try it.
okay.
Try it now.
But the
Try it
beauty
on the next
about
one.
it definitely makes you feel like I gotta finish because I don't
Sure.
want to get, I don't know, do they charge you a fee if you
No, 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 no.
don't check it
They
back in?
automatically returns. It's automatic. There's no fees,
So
no
you
late
could be
charges.
3/4 of the way through and your book's gone.
Yeah, it just happened to me. That book that
Oh,
Brad
that's
recommended.
awful.
Well, I'll just get it later. It's fine. There's a book that Brad recommended last time, and I started listening to it, and then I'm like, oh, I have like for 2 days. Oh well, I'll just get it next time. So yeah,
Okay. All right. It's interesting how this economy of books and libraries work.
yeah. It
I
is
just
weird
prefer
that
to
like
buy
there's
it.
like this digital scarcity. Like, okay.
Yes,
And I get it
that's
that the libraries probably have to pay some sort of commission to the authors, I'm assuming, I hope.
they
Um,
probably have a so
yeah.
many licenses,
And
right?
it says, yeah, it says there's 6 books in circulation, 12
Yeah.
people are waiting, blah, blah, blah. But it's just nice. Anyway, okay. So you've got this book. You
Yeah.
felt like you had to hurry through it. Tell me about it.
Okay, there's 99 chapters. They're 1 2 page they're really small chapters. It was maybe a 10-hour listen. So it goes really fast once you get going, which is kind of nice. You don't have to start in any one place. You could just
Hmm.
start on chapter 46 and it'll give you a bias. So what Rolf does in this book, and I've thought about writing this type of book. He takes all or most of the mental biases that we have. And I've talked about these before, like with
Hmm.
Thinking Fast and Slow, and a couple other books that we've done on the podcast. But he basically synthesizes all of this information about human error in the way that we think about things, that we automate our thinking process into 99 biases, 99 chapters, and they're very short. Each chapter has an example, what the bias is, and then he talks about at the end of the book how to avoid these biases. So I've just picked 5 of these, and I thought I'll go through 5 biases just to give you a sampling, but there's 99. So
Okay. Wow.
it yeah, so I found listening to it because there wasn't a common thread from one chapter to the next that my mind would drift. I'd like
Hmm.
listen to 6 or 7 of the biases and then my mind starts to wander.
Yeah.
And so I'd like stop listening. I got to come back to it later. You have a question?
Maybe you said this, but does he have like studies behind it or is it like anecdotal or both?
He's well researched.
Okay.
He's pulling in all kinds of studies,
Okay.
very economic heavy. So I don't know
Hmm.
what his background is. I was thinking about looking him up, but he uses a lot of economics, a lot of finance,
Okay.
a lot of research. He pulls from different professors and studies. And so
Okay.
it's very well documented. I think for what the book is, I think he did a really good job. So first bias, this is and I won't give all the chapters, but this one I just happen to know because I looked it up. It's chapter 43 is called the action bias. The action bias is something like this. Like when you were a kid, did you play soccer?
Oh yeah.
Were you the goalie?
I was the goalie. I was
Okay.
the goalie. I never scored a goal my entire career.
Okay. Matt
Uh,
is like just a block,
yeah.
like I'm
Yep.
just imagining your
Yep.
coach, like, dude, put him in the goalie. That kid will
Exactly.
block everything. And you've got really long arms. So I
That's
just
true.
imagine, yeah,
Yes.
you're like
I
designed to be
actually
a goalie.
that when I was finally on a really good team, I actually got a yellow card. I was so bored because the ball was at the other side of the field for so long. I was just hanging in the nets. Like I was just playing around. I was probably like 12 or 13. And they stopped play for a minute and people are yelling at me to get out of the net. I can't understand what's going on because they're so far away. And finally I get out of the net and then like the end of the game, they're like, I can't believe you almost got a red card. Like you got yellow carded. I'm like, I did for what? They're like for unsportsmanlike conduct because you were like taunting the other team by just hanging out in the net. I'm like, oh, I
Oh,
had no idea. I was just bored. Anyway, all right.
like I was
So I'm a
just doing
block.
pull-ups in
Yeah, yeah. I
the
was just
post.
hanging
All
out
right.
in the net. Okay, so that I interrupted your
All
story.
right. So as a goalie, so when
Yes.
the ball comes to goalies, he said statistically the ball in we're talking penalty kicks now.
Oh, okay.
So when a
Mm-hmm.
PKs are going on, statistically, and I might have my numbers a little bit off, but this is the rough idea. A third of the time the ball goes to the left, the kicker kicks it to the left. A third of
Mm-hmm.
the time the kicker kicks it to the right, and a third
Mm-hmm.
of the time the kicker kicks it to the middle.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this perfect distribution of where
Right.
the kick goes is
Okay.
left, right, middle.
Okay.
The goalie, however, 50% of the time goes to the right,
Mm-hmm.
50% of the time goes to the left.
Mm-hmm.
And you think, well, that's weird. Why wouldn't the goalie just stay in the middle a third of
Mm-hmm.
the time? Like, why isn't the goalie
Right.
distribution the same as where the ball's going? And why do you think that is? Why do you think the goalie is like choosing right, choosing left?
I think because you just assume they're going to go for the place where you can't get it, or in theory, you're going to have a hard time getting it. That's my guess.
His theory, okay, his theory is if you are the goalie and you've got 10,000 people watching you
Mm-hmm.
and you just stand in the middle with your arms up
Yeah,
and
you
you
look
don't
like an idiot.
dive
Yeah,
and it goes right and you miss it. Now, statistically, you were right just to stay in the middle.
sure.
But if you don't move, if you don't take action, you feel kind of like an idiot and the
Okay.
fans are going to be like, "Come on,
Yeah,
you need to
yeah.
act. You need to do something." So there's this tendency we have as humans to act,
Mm-hmm.
and this is the action bias. He talked about bar brawls or riots
Mm-hmm.
that when a young police officer is in the mix, so you've got a riot going on,
Mm-hmm.
young officer is there, they have this bias towards action. I need
Mm-hmm.
to act, I need to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And they found that the fatalities were higher when young officers were involved because they had this bias towards action,
Hmm.
where more experienced officers they were experienced. They're like, I don't need to act. I need to
I'm not
just
gonna
kind of
stop. Yeah,
observe.
yeah.
Yeah, I
Gotcha.
just need to watch here for
Mm-hmm.
a minute and maybe take action if absolutely required, but I'm not going to get in the mix and
Right.
make it worse. Start shooting people and so this action bias, the reason why that one stuck out to me is I was thinking about when when trading is happening and the market's going crazy like during the pandemic there were days where the stock market was up 8%, it was down 9%. It was just a
Mm-hmm.
crazy period of time. Your brain is going, do I need to sell? Do I need to
Mm-hmm.
buy? Do I
Mm-hmm.
like should I be doing something right now?
Mm-hmm.
And having been through several of those cycles, now I'm just like, you know what? It's going to land somewhere eventually, and then it's going to go back up, right? And that's
Mm-hmm.
exactly what happened. It landed somewhere, hit a bottom, the Fed acted, blah, blah, blah. Markets recover, and now we're back to all-time highs. And I'm not giving investment advice here, but I just thought that was a really important principle that sometimes it pays just to stand in the middle and
Mm-hmm.
not take any action. So we have a
Interesting.
bias towards action. So be careful before you interact or respond or try to get in the mix, especially if it's an activity that's new to you. If you're a new officer, new at investing, new at your job, just sit back and just observe for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Don't feel like you need to get in the action too quickly. All right, the second one is the sunk cost fallacy.
Oh yeah.
So I think everyone's experienced
We
this. I
talked
have a
about it when we talked about that
playhouse.
book, Quit. Remember Quit with Annie
Oh
Duke?
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
That's right, with Annie Duke. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
she talks about this. So I was thinking maybe to hit on this one more time. I started building this playhouse 10 years ago in my backyard for my daughter, who is now 19. She doesn't even have any desire to go in the playhouse.
Mm-hmm.
I had materials. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna build this cool playhouse, and I got, it's pretty good, but I didn't quite finish the playhouse. So now the birds are nesting
Mm.
in the roof. It's not weatherproof, so when it snows, it kind of
Yeah.
leaks. There's a little bleeding on the drywall on the inside. It's just this mess. And part of me is like, I put time into that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to give up on the project.
Right.
I can't bring myself to just raise it to the ground and just be like, we're just going to plant a garden here
Yeah.
and not have but I still have a younger daughter and she's like, yeah, dad, let's fix it. So, but there's this sunk cost fallacy that I've put time into this project
Mm-hmm.
and I'm now putting more time, more
Right.
money, more energy. Now I've got a general contractor that I'm going to pay to winterize this thing and make it nice. And I'm thinking, this is so dumb.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the sunk cost fallacy
Yep.
driving me to finish this project because I've already put energy into it. So
Yep.
these are just examples of some of the heuristics biases that we have. We talked a little bit about social proof. I thought this was a good one to bring up again from the book. A few episodes ago, I talked about influence, that people often look to the behavior of others to determine what's the correct or appropriate action given in a situation. So they kind of monitor other people. And if you have enough people driving momentum towards a specific behavior, you're more likely to follow that group. So if you get into an elevator, have you seen those old candid camera videos where the guy gets in an elevator and everyone's facing the back of the elevator? Have you seen these?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. After the pod, look it up. They're like 1950s, 1960s videos.
Hmm.
So the joke is guys getting into an elevator and everyone in the elevator is facing the opposite direction. Normally you face the door,
Sure.
right? I don't know, maybe you don't,
No, I do.
or sideways or whatever. All right, so he gets in and everyone is facing the other direction. So he is like, what is going on? And he ends up just, maybe I'm supposed to face the other way. So you can see him just doing what everybody else is doing.
Mm-hmm.
And these videos continue on. Like one guy has everyone in the thing has a hat. He gets in, he has a hat on, and he sees everyone in the elevator take their hat off and put it on their heart. And he sees them do that. So he grabs his hat, kind of puts it on it, you know.
Yeah.
So it's just funny. We do this sometimes if we're talking and someone else folds their arms that we're talking to. Have you ever noticed that? You'll
Mm-hmm.
like fold your arms too.
Yep.
Um, so social proof is very powerful. It is something to just like don't follow the herd, but we tend to be herd minded. Okay, confirmation bias, seeking out information that confirms an existing belief. I
Yep.
mean, this almost never happens in politics. You have a candidate you kind of like that agrees with you on things, and somebody says, oh, that person actually is a murderer. And you're like, no, I don't think so.
Right. Right.
You'll seek out any information to debunk that information that creates that cognitive dissonance in your
Yeah.
head because you need everything to be complete and nicely packed,
Yeah.
and confirmation bias just allows you to avoid experiencing the pain of having to deal with something that's contrary to what your belief is.
Yep.
So that one's pretty powerful. And then maybe one last one. This was a little bit of a toss up. I just wanted to do five. I mean, there's 99 in this book, and
Yeah.
it's just like back to you feel either really dumb after reading it or super humbled. And I
Mm-hmm.
probably came away with feeling both emotions. So availability heuristic. This bias occurs when people overestimate the importance of information that is readily available to them.
Mm-hmm.
For example, dramatic or vivid events, even if statistically rare, can seem more likely or significant than they actually are.
Right.
And I may have talked about this before, but our neighbor's house was broken into
Yeah.
probably 15 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and the home security salesperson hit that neighborhood and had like a 99% hit rate on
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
house because
Exactly.
we all knew what happened. It's like, oh, they broke in the basement window. Are you kidding me?
Hmm.
And who knows? It was like a one-off break-in,
Sure.
but everybody then rushed in to get a 4-year contract with this guy. It was awful. So I would, well, any questions or thoughts? Anything you'd add to that?
um,
This book that you think you've read but you've forgotten
well,
about.
I don't know if I've read it, but I do. Our editor Ian has pointed out some video to me, and it's got something similar like, and I think his was like a box of 25, like a almost like a little calendar, one for every day. And a lot of those are on there. So a lot of these I've heard of, but I'm sure it's interesting to hear the studies behind it or whatever. Does he? The one question I have is, does he tell you how to avoid some of those things that are incorrect, or does he give you advice on
Yeah.
like, oh, here's how to avoid the sunk cost fallacy? Because this is something you should listen
Yeah.
to. It sounds like.
He does. He'll end each chapter with a little quip, like a little
Mm-hmm.
funny, make sure you don't do that, or
Mm-hmm.
just be aware. So he's got a little bit of a sense of humor at the end of each chapter, but at the end of the book, he goes a little bit more into just being aware of the biases, know that they exist, that we're prone to do them.
Mm-hmm.
And he does give some good examples about like a book that I did. I actually don't know if I've covered this one. We've been doing this for almost a year now, so
Mm-hmm.
it's like blurring in my mind.
Oh, I know.
But there was a book called The Intelligence Trap. Have we done that one
I
yet?
think
Have
so. I
I?
think so. Yeah.
Okay, I think I did. So in that book, he kind of reiterates some of the principles from that book that triangulate your decisions, bring in other sources of information, take your time making decisions. So he does towards the end of the book give more a reasoned, methodical way of making decisions. But I also thought we have to live. You can't wake up in the morning and think, should I brush my teeth this morning? Maybe I should ask a few people. I'm going to call Matt and ask him if I should brush my teeth. We have so many decisions. We make hundreds of decisions.
Hmm.
I kind of do a weight in my life where I weight the significance of the decision. And if it's a little bit weightier, going to have more impact on my life or commitment, I will start to ask questions and slow down and triangulate, bring people in. What do you think about this? Is this valuable, not valuable? Have you experienced
Don't
this before?
don't you have a
Yeah, go
way
ahead.
of telling your daughters like, is this a something decision or another decision? Like, you have some little anecdote that you
Yeah.
say. What is it? Can you
Oh,
share it here? I can't remember.
sure. Sure. So you have what's called a hat decision.
Okay.
Okay. If I put on a silly hat and everyone makes fun of me, like I have a Bitcoin hat. I
Hmm.
wear it. I don't care. I love it. It's an awesome hat. But people give me strange looks when I'm out in
Yeah.
public, like, oh boy, one of those guys.
Uh-huh.
But it's a cool hat. And I like
Got it.
that digital asset. Anyways, so hat decisions are something you can easily take off and replace. I could take off that
Got it.
hat, put on a different hat.
Got it.
Easy. Those kinds of decisions, don't worry too much. Don't lose sleep over them. The
Got it.
next decision are haircut decisions.
Mm.
If I shave my head today and it looks awful, I was asking you about the facial hair, growing out a little bit of a beard now.
Put some comments in here
Okay, well,
if you like the hair, guys. Let's let them know what you
thanks.
think.
So if you cut your hair too short or your haircut looks horrible, it's
I think you
okay.
should do a mustache. You might want to try a mustache. That would look pretty good.
No,
Try it. I
no
bet
offense
your
to
wife will
those that
hate
do the
it.
mustache. I'll hate it.
Well,
I do not.
you
My
gotta at
dad,
least when you shave it, you need to at least like keep it for a day or so. I've done that. My wife
no.
hates it. Hates it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've just never been a mustache
I
guy.
think it would look good.
I
I think
can't.
it would look good.
The goatee looks all right.
Yeah.
The mustache, I don't
Okay,
know.
we're off track. So you got a
So
haircut
okay, so
decision,
haircut
something that's
decisions,
a little bit bigger of
it's
a
gonna
deal.
grow back. Yeah, a little bit bigger of a deal. You dye your hair, you cut it too short, it looks awful. You have bangs, maybe
Yep.
for women. Some women are like, I'm going bangs, and they do, and immediately they're like, what did I do?
Yeah.
My bangs are in my way. I can't do my hair. I've
Yep.
got all girls, so we've done bangs. Every one of them has done bangs, and then they immediately regret bangs.
Got it.
But it grows back. It grows out.
Sure.
you're going to survive. And then the last decision, these are the ones you really, really have to think about. And if you're not sure, the answer is no. These are tattoo decisions, which
Mhm.
you and I have talked about that
Yes.
before. Like those are kind of permanent. Those go on there,
Yeah.
and um, it's not fun to have them removed. They're there. It might be fun right now, or it might be something that you're like, yeah, this is pretty sweet. But then, my grandpa, when I was younger, I wanted to get, this is when I was like 10. So just keep that in the scales as you judge me right now. But I'm of Italian descent, and I thought it would be so cool on my bicep to
Yeah.
have an Italian flag around my arm, not barbed
Yeah.
wire, but just the Italian flag. I
Yeah.
thought
Just around the whole thing.
it'd be pretty sick.
Yes.
And then I was getting into a hot tub with my grandpa, and he was like in his 70s. No offense to anybody in their 70s, but he was like saggy and wrinkly, and I was looking at his skin. I was thinking that flag is waving when I
Yep.
get older.
Exactly.
Stretched
Exactly.
out, maybe not look as cool. So that was the end of that. I
Gotcha.
didn't end up doing the tattoo, but I've had several decisions that have been tattoo decisions in my life
Hmm.
that have stuck with me, were not good decisions,
Sure.
and I've had to kind of work my way out of them. So hat,
Okay. Hat,
hair,
haircut,
tattoo.
tattoo. I love it. I love it. All right.
Take your time.
Thanks for sharing
Take your
that.
time on the
All
tattoo
right. What are
ones.
you going to give this book, and what are you going to rate it, and what are you truly applying to your life out of the 90 whatever things? What's the thing that stuck out the
uh
most?
the
Clearly
thing that
not
stuck out
the sunk cost fallacy. Clearly that did not stick because you're
that did
paying a
not work
contractor.
because I'm committed to
At
this
least you
stupid
got a good
playhouse.
contractor. I know the
Yeah,
contractor.
oh
He's a
yeah,
great guy. So he will take care of you.
he's gonna do awesome. He looked at it and he was like, "Oh my gosh, like, I don't even know how to resurrect this thing. It's so bad." I'm like, "I'm sorry, but I'll pay you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pay him an hourly wage to like build a mini house for my 9-year-old that's
Yes.
gonna use it for a year, and then it's
Yes.
gonna be there.
Yeah. Good.
Who knows? And then I'll raise it to the ground.
Yeah.
I give the book a a solid. I'll give it a double with an RBI.
Okay. I like it.
Okay. So we got a runner in. We're on second base. He put a lot of research and time into the book. I love the variety of biases. I like that it was well researched.
Mm-hmm.
I just struggled to continue to
Mm-hmm.
find myself interested in plowing through it. I felt like
Gotcha.
I really did have to continue to push through like a textbook. I got to get to the end just because there were so many individual biases. It doesn't really go deep on a lot of stories. And I think I gravitate towards a book that maybe has 7 chapters that go 1 inch wide and a mile deep. I tend to
Mm-hmm.
prefer those types of books.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was very surface level, 99 chapters. Probably I listened to this one on Libby. I think I will buy it just so I have access to all of those different biases and I'll
Yeah.
flip through it.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
It's and it's something you can have on the shelf.
Yeah. I've done that too, where it's like, oh, I kind of want to look at this particular table or reference just to have it rather than try to search for where it was in the audiobook or whatever. All right.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Okay.
So
What have
my
you got
book
for us
is
today?
called Zombified: Real World Lessons from Fictional Apocalypses by her name is
Oh, you're
Athena
like bringing some fiction in
Actopus.
today.
So kind of, yeah. So this is real
Okay.
world lessons from fictional apocalypses. So this is not a fiction book, but she's talking about fictional, films and books about zombies or whatever. And
Okay.
in theory, she's trying to help you figure out what you can learn from those fictional apocalypses for your own good. Okay. So
Okay.
I it's kind of an interesting concept, right? I'm not a huge zombie guy, and I don't even know why I picked this book up. I just saw it on Audible and grabbed it. Um, it it's well, let me back up. She is a doctor. She has a doctorate of psychology. I think she's at Arizona State. She's a researcher, not a clinical psychologist. But what she does is she's kind of talks about like real world parallels to zombification. So kind of like actual biological kind of zombies. So there's the cordyceps fungus, and that infects like ants. I don't know if you've ever seen this. It hijacks their nervous system, and they basically climb really high so that it makes the ant climb super high and then die so that it could spread its spores. So that's the way that the fungus.
Oh, yes.
Seen this?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. I have heard of this. Yes, that mushrooms go
yeah,
and drill into their brain and then makes them crazy.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Then there's the
Okay.
Toxoplasma gondii, and this is a parasite that infects rodents. It makes them so they're not afraid of cats, so that ultimately they'll get eaten by the cat, and then the parasite can then jump to the cat. Um, and then she talks about rabies, right? Which is, a little different, doesn't necessarily control, but she's kind of trying to make, you know, I always have an issue with these kind of things, like from the animal. I think I've talked about this, right? From the animal kingdom, like, oh, this particular duck species mates for life, and it's just that's what we are. We're the mallard duck of a couple, a married couple, and it's like, okay, well, then there's this other one that like tries to reproduce with everything it sees. You know what I mean? Like, it's just funny what people pick and choose from the animal kingdom to try to apply to human life. So I always have kind of an issue with that,
Sure.
but she is kind of giving an example of like, okay, yeah, all these zombie stories are fictional, but there is some real world biology. Okay, fair enough, right? Um, and she then talks about like, this is I didn't love this one either, but also I'm an older man, so maybe this doesn't affect me as much. But then she talks about like social and psychological forms of zombification. So think of like social media, being on your phone, some even like romantic relationships where you're kind of just doing things without thinking. And I get it. Sometimes you're just scrolling, on your phone, looking
Yep.
at whatever, but it's a bit corny in that, like, okay, well, and maybe your social proof thing fits in there, but like, I don't know, it's a bit much for me, if that makes sense.
Okay. Okay.
Um,
So can I ask a question here?
sure, sure.
So she's trying to take this futuristic world idea. We've seen lots of movies with zombies,
Hmm.
and she's pulling it into today, like in ways that we are actually being zombies. Is
Well,
that
sort of.
fair
That's
to
the first
say?
part. That's the first part. So hold that thought
Okay.
for one
Okay.
second. Because then she talks
All
about
right.
like the timeline or like cultural interpretations of zombies, what anxieties and fears they represent, and then um like technology, like how can we she's trying ultimately to say, how do we take these fake stories and apply them to potential disasters in our own life, right? So think of like a tornado that takes your town apart. How has watching the Night of Living Dead, how can that help you prepare? Well, oh, Billy ran down to the store and got, this and that. I don't know, I'm making this up obviously, but she's trying to say like, what do we learn from some of these fictional things that we could apply to some of the things that happen in real life. And obviously, she wrote this after COVID, so she talks about that as kind of a, what did we learn from maybe the movies that would help us be more prepared. Like, so sometimes people will watch some sort of show and it's like, you know what, I probably should have more food storage or water storage, or be prepared for an emergency, or how do we communicate when the telephone lines are down, or whatever. So that's kind of her whole thesis of the book. um and then she does talk a little bit about, so she is a psychologist, so she does have some good research in it. But well, let me tell you the research, the one that I remember. So she talks a little bit about like morbid curiosity. Like, some people love to watch like horror films. I'm not one of those people, but she
Mm-hmm.
does talk about how, in a way, it's a way to prepare yourself for like things that are scary. She talks about the animal kingdom, where sometimes gazelles are morbidly curious about a lion. They'll like look over just to see, hey, is the lion just eaten? Am I safe? Sometimes they'll just jump up out of the nowhere to like just to show the lion that they can get away quickly. um and she just says there's almost like this parallel between like, hey, look, if you're tired, lion, let's not do this chase, you know what I mean, because I can clearly get away from you. And the lion's like, you know what, yeah, you're right, I'm not that hungry, I'm not going to chase you today. So there's like this symbiosis or whatever. But she talks about this book, and there's a study, this study that, from a video game called, I think it's called Morbid Light. And it's a it's a game where you're hooked up to like biofeedback. So this more you have a light, you're trying to explore this scary maze or scary house or whatever in the game, but it's connected to you, and the more scared you get, so like the higher your heartbeat or whatever and your respiratory rate, the less light you have. So the more scared you are in real life, the harder the game becomes. Does that make sense? And
Yeah.
and the study was that people that had played that game, their anxiety had dropped in real life, some percentage. So she kind of does give some good examples of like how maybe watching a scary show might prepare you for a real life situation. And then
Oh,
she gives an anecdote. I don't know if you ever saw the show or read the book Dirty John. Does that ring a bell?
no.
Okay, I bet your wife and a lot of feel like a lot of ladies read this book or watched the show. It's basically this guy who I think he pretends to be something. He basically is kind of a gold digger on the male side, and he finds some kind of rich old lady that takes care of him, and ultimately he I think the daughter finds out. I don't know the whole story. The daughter finds out, and he ends up trying to. This is a real story though. You're googling it right
Okay.
now. I hope. Are you googling it right now?
I'm
You
I'm
should.
I'm Googling some stuff as you're talking. Yes.
Anyway, he ends up attacking her in the parking lot. He's waiting for her and the daughter in the parking lot, and they're struggling even though he like totally outweighs her. Somehow the knife comes loose, and she remembers from The Walking Dead when somebody stabbed a zombie in the eye. So she's like, I'm going to stab him in the eye, and she does, and she ends up surviving and killing the guy. So she does give some real life examples of supposedly something that they learned from a zombie show that helped her survive. But some
So when I watched Karate Kid when I was young, that prepared me.
correct
The
for the
crane. Okay.
bullying, yes, for all the
I'm ready for the
bullying.
bowling.
um,
That's crazy though. So the girl watched that movie and then she's like, I'm just gonna take
yeah,
this guy's eyeball. Wow.
yeah, and so she
Okay.
does, and she specifically remembers like, oh, I remember watching that in The Walking Dead. I'm gonna do this. So overall, it's one of those books where I liked it, but she tries a little bit to be kind of funny, and it didn't. You know how I am about that, right? Like
Yeah.
I don't know. There's just the tone is slightly more I don't know, humorous and pop culture and like, oh, isn't this fun, a clever, you know, uh, clever memory that I just quoted, or what I mean? Oh, remember this? You know what I mean? Like, oh, isn't that funny from the '90s?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, stuff like that.
Do
So
you how
I
did
don't know.
you find this is a kind of a like an outside book for you? How did you find this book? And
So I sometimes I just go on Audible and I just randomly find stuff. Actually, it's a lot of times, honestly, I go to their sale section, like when they're having a sale, and I'm like, oh, I wonder if this is something
oh,
I'd like. And I don't honestly remember because it's been a while since I re-listened to it a little bit of it today to kind of refresh my memory. But I don't know how I mean, I just found it there randomly, and it is actually an Audible only. Like, yeah, I don't think you can buy I don't think there's a physical version. At least
oh,
according to this, it
okay.
says like only
Okay.
on Audible or something. I could be wrong.
All right. Okay.
Anyway, um, it says, yeah, only from Audible. So, oh, you know what's funny? It here's where it maybe came from. So I love the great courses. That's where we talked about that exploration book, even though it's not a book, it's a lecture. Um, this is apparently one of the great courses things too. So it could have just been that connection of like, stuff from professors that is interesting. Anyway, so overall, I'd probably give it a double. I mean, maybe if you're really into zombies, it might be more interesting to you. I don't really care that much about them, but it's definitely a catchy title, right? Like real world lessons from fictional apocalypses.
Yeah.
So maybe that just kind of caught my eye. It's also pretty short. I want to say it's like 3-4 hours on Audible, so it's not
Oh, okay.
too crazy. Does that make sense? Like she doesn't overstay her
Yeah.
welcome. So to me, it's a double. But if you really are into this kind of stuff, it's great. I just think some of the connections that she makes of like, oh, here's how we're going to survive a real apocalypse, because we watched, The Walking Dead. I'm like, okay, let's not get carried away.
Yeah.
That's
All
my opinion.
right.
So
I've never gotten into the zombie thing. There's been a couple movies that
yeah,
are yeah, kind of interesting,
they're fine.
but
I feel like they're basically the I don't want to say stormtroopers of like of like horror, like, oh, okay, well, they're zombies, so we can just kill them as much as possible and nobody cares, right? Like
Yeah.
stormtroopers, like, okay, they're just these dudes that we shoot, hit with lightsabers or whatever, and they just, just carve them down. They're just this army of, no name fodder basically for the heroes to take care of. So
Right.
not a
Right.
huge fan, but
Exactly.
whatever.
Exactly.
All right. Any
I
closing
love it.
thoughts?
So, just for those listening, we're going to post these links to Zombified and The Art of Thinking Clearly in the show notes. So, we're trying to just make it easier for people to just tap on it. It will take you to Amazon, throw it in your cart. If you're interested in these books or topics, we appreciate that support. It does, we are an Amazon affiliate, so you don't pay any more to use those links, but you can click on the link and order the book if you're interested. And
Cool.
that's all I've got, Matt.
All right. Everybody, remember to think clearly when the zombie apocalypse happens and you'll be okay, right?
That's a great tie-in.
All right. Thanks to Deja Vega for the music, and appreciate everybody listening to the show. Like, subscribe, tell your friends. We'll catch you next time on the Pitchbook Podcast.